It's time to talk about this. This move has been probably the worst kept secret in the women's football business since Onabatje forced a move from Man United to Barcelona. And I just made a video about a club building its women's team organically, building the right foundations, a clear vision in mind, with Union Berlin, so it feels kinda icky to talk about Michele Kang's London City Lionesses, a multi-club ownership. A team that signs players not for sporting reasons, but for publicity. So yeah, Alexia Putellas joining London City Lionesses, I don't like it. I would have rather seen her in Mexico, or another contender in the Champions League, USA, or maybe even a club like Union Berlin. But no, one of the best players in the world, who still has a few good years left, is going to a club that won't even be able to play in the Champions League if they qualify. Which, don't get me wrong, I am very happy that UEFA are putting the foot down here and enforcing their regulations against multi-club ownership. I just wish they did it in men's football also. So, let's talk about the good and the bad of London City Lionesses, as well as what the squad looks like as of now. Before they were rebranded, the club was originally Milwall Lionesses, the women's arm of Milwall FC. The club had a pretty significant role in early English women's football in the 90s, winning 2 FA Cups and developing many future English Lionesses. In 2014, they were founding members of the WSL2. Obviously though, to have a women's side, you have to have money, and Milwall just couldn't get out of the men's championship. In 2018, Milwall said that the women's side was struggling financially and could go into administration, leading to the women's side splitting from Milwall in 2019 to become independent, reforming as the London City Lionesses. The next few years, London City were one of the top teams in the championship, but always missed out on promotion. The 2022-23 season was a mess though. They were first in the league for a while, led by Atlanta Primus and Sarah Owens, until their manager, Melissa Phillips, left the club in January to be the assistant coach at Angel City FC, otherwise known as Ponzi Scheme FC. Yes, their manager left the club when they were in first place in the championship, on a run to secure promotion. The club ended up finishing 3rd. Although they were taken over by outside owners after the separation from Milwall, the club still wasn't in a great place, and the players themselves asked the owner to sell. Before the year ended, it was official. The club was sold to the owner of the Washington Spirit and Olympique Lyon Femení, Michele Kang, in December of 2023. By then, the season was already beyond washed, and the club finished 8th in the 2nd tier. The summer of 2024 is when we saw the real Michele Kang effect. And by that, I mean throwing around a ridiculous amount of money. The first announcement was the signing of Sweden captain Kosovar Asllani, which really got the attention of everyone because a player of that caliber playing in the 2nd tier in England was close to unthinkable. They were not done though, as they got their hands on another legend of the Swedish national team, the speedy Sofia Jakobsson. Yeah, this attack was going to be insane. Another Swede transferred in, Julia Rodar from Damallsvenskan champions Hammarby, and a bunch of English youngsters like Isabel Godwin, Chelsea youngsters Emily Orman, and Sarah Brown, and Arsenal youth product Taya Goldie. They also nabbed Maria Perez from La Masia. Given Paris Saint-Germain being, you know, PSG, Kang also was able to poach manager Jocelyn Pressure from the club, a very well-regarded coach. Throwing money around to get promotion worked. The club won the 2024-25 championship in Kang's first full year as owner, becoming the first fully independent women's team to ever be promoted to the Super League. And when they were promoted to the first flight, it was clear they had no intent of getting relegated. Bear with me, this is going to be a long list. Their first signing that summer was Danielle Van de Donk from Lyon, which of course rose eyebrows. Not just because of the caliber of the player, but because Kang owned Lyon. This was an intra-club ownership group transfer, which, They then brought in Finnish national team mainstay and Real Sociedad forward, Sonny Franci, and young left-back Poppy Pattinson from Brighton. They also moved fast to secure the future of loanee Freya Godfrey, who joined them in the championship on loan from Arsenal. Despite all the big money moves I'm about to touch on, this one ended up being by far one of their most important. A few days later, the club made another headline signing in Women's Super League veteran and Euro 2022 winner Nikita Paris. They followed that up with the acquisition of young defender Jana Fernandez from Barcelona, aka Alexia Putellas' best friend. Then went shopping at Angel City for former Manchester United captain Katie Zellum and Australian defender Alana Kennedy. The best was yet to come though. In September, it was announced that the club had broken the world record transfer fee for France and PSG star midfielder Grace Gayoro for £1.4 million. One of the best players in the world. Worryingly, she didn't really play like it this season. The first half of the season went really well, and the newly promoted club found themselves in 6th place come winter break. Wait, what's that? For some reason, the club sacked Jocelyn Pressure, the man who got them promoted and in a good position, because reportedly, it wasn't in their long-term plans to keep him, which is so stupid. You are in 6th place. In Pressure's place, they brought in Spanish manager Eder Maestre. So, who is this knockoff Jonathan Heraldez, you ask? You cannot tell me they do not look alike. Well, he managed UD Tenerife Femenino for a year, getting them to 6th place in Liga F. That's kinda it. They threw more money at the project in January, signing Delphine Cascarino from the San Diego Wave. Despite the risk of a new manager, London City stayed right where they were and finished 6th in the league. However, their cup results weren't great. They got knocked out in the 5th round of the FA Cup by Tottenham Hotspur, although they did put up a fight, but had a miserable performance in the Women's League Cup, being topped by Crystal Palace and losing to the soon-to-be relegated Leicester City. However, the main priority was definitely the league, and they did a solid job there. And you could argue that they did in fact underperform, given the fact they bought a player for over £1 million, but this is a championship side trying to get their footing. There is going to be an adjustment. So it is still early in the transfer window, but already we are starting to get an idea of what the team will look like this season. It was just announced that the club had re-signed breakout youngster Freya Godfrey to a 3-year contract extension. Godfrey really found her footing this year in the Women's Super League, playing even better than she did the year before in the championship, leading the team in goals in the Women's Super League. London City being able to develop players like Godfrey, who earned her first English call-up, is definitely a positive sign. But apparently they said screw that, when you could just throw money around to sign players near the end of their careers. As I covered in my last transfer news recap, it has been widely reported that LCL are set to sign 31-year-old centre-back Mapi Léon from Barcelona, and 33-year-old Mary Earps has already been officially signed from PSG. And I said this before, but from a playing perspective, Lyon is a solid signing. She still has probably 2 to 3 good years left, and is still a top player despite her, I guess technically on the pitch activities. Yes, I bring this up every time I talk about Lyon. What about it? Mary Earps though, I think this is where we really start to see the true goals of London City Lionesses. Earps was launched to stardom after the 2022 Euros in England, and listen, she was great at the competition. Unfortunately, she started to regress after the fact. If you watched any PSG game this year, you would have seen Earps doing some bullshit. She has just been more of a liability in goal the past 2 years rather than an advantage. And London City entered this transfer window needing an upgrade at goalkeeper. At this point in her career, I'm not sure if Earps is an upgrade. What she is though, is popular. Her and Mapi Léon are 2 popular players that casual fans will pay to see. Michele Kang's long-term goal with London City Lionesses is profit, which nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it turns a football club into a commodity rather than a community item and puts their ability to play the best football they can at risk. And we know the main priority here is profit because the team cannot compete in the Women's Champions League. Even if they win the Women's Super League, become the best team in England, as long as Kang owns Lyon and UEFA keeps up their multi-club ownership standard, the club is handicapped. The signing of Putellas can be seen as a huge statement, and it is. Putellas is still very much one of the best players in the world, and will help them aim for top 4 next season. But what's the point of finishing top 3 if you can't qualify for the Champions League? Well, the other side of the Putellas signing is that people in London, and even outside of London, will come to home games to watch her. and that is the goal of this club. You can say this can help grow the women's game in the United Kingdom, increase attendance across the league, and I wouldn't argue against that. It's just that the football purist in me hates when clubs are treated as a portfolio instead of a football club. Publicity signings happen all the time, and I get it. You need money in the women's game. Like, I thought it was fun when Tottenham signed Alex Morgan. How the team is being built, though, gives me worry. Grace Gayoro having the season she had last year is very, very worrying, because she can be one of the best midfielders in the world, but it seems like they just signed her because she played for Lyon's rival and had a big name. They clearly didn't know how to use her this season, and her play suffered because of it. All the money is being spent on stars, and while I know they also have great facilities, that doesn't leave much money for depth or even certain overlooked positions, like goalkeeper. Okay, so this is what one of the lineups could look like, right? Godfrey, Izzy Godwin, and Cascarino up top. Then you have legends in the midfield, and a backline that can be adjusted with options. A good mix of veterans and youth. And at first this looks like a pretty good side because it is. This is a good lineup. Then you also have Maria Perez, Danielle Van de Donk, Elena Linari, Nikita Paris, the very underrated Lucia Corrales, and Aslani coming off the bench. Wait, no, her contract expired. Ignore Aslani. The problem is, none of the other players I mentioned beside the 32-year-old Linari are defenders. Like, yes, there is the promising French 20-year-old center-back, Wassa Sangare, but she is on loan from Lyon. Tactically, Mapi Léon and Jana Fernandez are both attacking-minded defenders. If the opposition gets on the counter, they are screwed, because the only help that will be there is the other center-back and most likely Kumagai. Which brings me to my next worry, age. London City star players are over 30 years old. This means you really have to worry about their fitness more and consistent performances. Like, yes, Van de Donk is a big name, but she isn't the same Super League player she was at Arsenal, and this is the downside to the strategy of signing players near the end of their peak. Worse, this keeps young, promising players on the bench, because London City Lionesses have talented youngsters, but I am scared that they won't see the pitch. Like, for example, 21-year-old Cirrus Brown was sent to Nottingham Forest on loan in the WSL2 for the second half of the season, and had a very strong showing. However, she was not getting game time when she was at London City at the start of the year, and she will still be behind Fernandez, which isn't bad because you do need to rotate your right backs. But then you add Mapi Léon to the equation, who does play there sometimes, and it gets complicated. 21-year-old Dutch defender Issa Cardinal and 22-year-old Thea Goldie barely got any playing time this season, and now we'll have another veteran in their way. So yeah, long term, I just still don't see the vision. And how do you know these fans who come to see Putellas play will stay fans of the club when she leaves in 2 years? Given her form, there's no way Earps keeps her starting spot, already giving the team a weakness. Great players does not make a great team always, and I am yet to see the tactical aspect of this lineup. Despite being a legend of the game, having a 35-year-old Saki Kumagai being one of your highest performing players last season is worrying, because what happens when she starts to regress more? There's a lot of change around the squad, a lot of new players, with different tactical installs, so we will see how the manager, Maestre, handles it. Putellas makes any team a contender, but what I worry about is the rest. Like, do I want to see Putellas and Godfrey play together? Yes, that'll be so fun. But Overall, the way people talk about Michele Kang is very interesting to me. She has been championed as a supporter of women's sports, and I'm not saying she's not, but as an American, I think it's a very American viewpoint to see multi-club ownership and be like, wow, what an innovator. Sorry. She is doing this for her own PR. And if that helps finance women's sports, great, I guess. I love that Kang gave the USA women's rugby team a big donation. But players and clubs in football mean a lot to fans, and building a club's profile by big-name players isn't sustainable. And when you use your multiple clubs across the world to influence transfers and weaken your other club's rivals, it goes against what the beautiful game is supposed to stand for. Will London City forever be handicapped because Lyon will always be the priority? Or will it get to the point, like in the men's game, where the English league is the top moneymaker, and Lyon, the most historic club in women's football, gets tossed aside like an afterthought? That is what worries me in all of this. Multi-club ownership is inherently a hierarchy of clubs. What are your takeaways from London City? Who else do you think they will sign? And obviously, what are your thoughts on them signing Putellas? Thank you so much for watching this video. These take a lot of time for me to make, so if you enjoyed the video, please like the video. I'd really appreciate it. All of that good stuff, and I will see you all later.